Welcome, everyone, to a brand new episode of the Bull Take Podcast. Been a hot minute, ladies and gentlemen, and I think you all know why. It's that time of year. We all got to study up, get ready for one of the best multi-week events of the year, Austin, and that's March Madness.
Yes.
Yes. So again,
Yeah.
it's happy to be back. First time back for us in a little bit. This is usually how we do it every single year. A little bit of a hiatus in between because, like I said, we got to get our games in. We got to watch Comp Champ Week. We had to get all the matchups in. Um, and then, of course, we got to fill out our great brackets here, which is what we are doing here today on this episode. And first and foremost, Austin, I'm just happy this time of year's back. We all love it at this time of year. It's good to see it return.
Yeah. I get extra excited around this time of year. My birthday happens at the beginning of the month, and then, for the end of the month into April, we get March Madness, maybe the best all-around sporting spectacle in the entire world. Where we just, I think what makes it so great is that, we talk about all the time, anything can happen. Because the game isn't so pure that we've got, the NBA where it's professional athletes and mistakes rarely happen. We're talking about still young kids, still learning, still developing their skills. And sometimes fluke games happen, and sometimes the worst team wins the game.
Hmm.
That's just how it comes. Flips sometimes here in the tournament. And with so many games being played, the probability that some of these underdogs, these lower seeds, these upset opportunities present themselves. And so it's always fun because you never know what you're going to see. And especially with the way some of these teams are coming into March, I think some teams are going to be riding high, and I think some teams are going to be hitting a little bit of a low at the wrong time. So I'm excited to get down and talk about it here. Like you said, watch Conference Championship Week, which gave me a really good feel for where some of these teams kind of lie. So I'm pretty proud with where I stand right now with some of these picks.
I think so as well. So before we dive into it, I was curious. I was going to ask you, um, have you had the chance to do a women's bracket yet? Obviously, it's Monday night. The bracket came out literally late last night, so I get it if you don't. Right now, I will go ahead and tell you this. I have not made mine. I will tell you this. I feel very confident I will have a UConn UCLA national championship. Just a heads up there.
Yeah, that was a blunder by me this time because the last couple of years we both had one. I will have one, and maybe
Yeah.
we'll get those posted on social media or champs
Yeah.
or something. But yes, I usually do have one. But I'll tell you, I messaged you last night. I've been so perplexed about some of the way my brackets have turned out, and just almost like crunching the numbers in my head about the teams that I've been picking, that I've really been honing in on perfecting my bracket for the men's, that I have not really got around to
Yeah.
making the women's yet. But there will be one, and we'll make some kind of social media post or something.
Yes.
Because yes, I usually have one of those by now.
I will go ahead. My sleeper, I will say that my sleeper team will probably have a go to the Final Four. Oklahoma is my sleeper here. Aaliyah Chavez, true freshman star for the late Sooners. So that's my sleeper there. But like I said, we will get that posted. We'll probably post them all together at some point, right whenever the tourney begins. But let's go ahead and let's dive into this men's bracket, Austin, and all kinds of drama entered in the champ week about a whole lot of things, involving certain undefeated teams and certain 16 lost teams, but their losses were to good teams. All kinds of drama there. So let's get started. Let's get out of the way talking about this bubble, which was, I'm going to be quite frank, and I'm sure you have an opinion on it too. This is one of the worst bubbles I have ever seen.
Yeah, this was honestly a joke of a selection. Um, this is kind of one of the reasons why I hate why we talk about who the first four out are.
Right.
To me, I've never really cared because you're in the same category as literally every other team that didn't make it. You're not special because you're one of the first four out. And this is kind of my big problem with this whole selection process, I guess. Auburn should not have been considered.
No.
Um,
No.
I'll come out and say it. I think the SEC was really good this year. It was an awesome league to watch. I think they have too many teams in the tournament for the first time in a long time. I feel like that about a power conference. There's some teams we're going to talk about here in a minute that I'm like, yeah, I guess they were good, but I don't know. Again, another issue I have, I'd like to see more smaller schools get bids and
Yeah,
not the SEC's ninth and 10th best teams. I
I agree.
mean, look, we're going to see some of those teams, and I'll talk about it, and I'll be blunt about it. I have several of those kind of bottom tier SEC schools not really standing a chance in this tournament.
Yeah.
I just think it kind of, causes issues with the structure of the tournament. But yeah, I think it's a big joke. I think the SEC gets what, 10 schools in. They don't need an 11th, especially when the 11th is 17 and 16.
Yeah.
Um, Auburn, look, Auburn should have just been disqualified to begin with. You talk about Bruce Pearl hanging it up, and I get it. You want to hang it up, that's
Yeah.
fine. But to
The
hold
timing on it was
basically the
so awful.
university holding the university and the players hostage
Right.
in a situation where they're forced to hire your son as their head coach and not consider any other options, and players are forced to stay or get caught up trying to learn a new playbook. And this is the result you're going to get. You have one of the worst coaches in college basketball for a first season. I would be very surprised if Stephen Pearl comes back. Obviously, the motivational speeches in the locker room not getting anybody hyped up. I saw somebody say Stephen Pearl couldn't get me hyped up to make a sandwich if I was hungry, and I couldn't agree more. Um, it's a complete sham from the university's perspective. I wonder how many guys will leave the University of Auburn after this year. And what's really a shame is where the basketball program's gotten under Bruce Pearl. Had he just had a ceremonious retirement and not tried to set up this ultimate nepotism trap, the University of Auburn would still be really good, and he wouldn't have to go crying on national television that his son deserves a spot because he's my boy and he tried really hard, even though they sucked this year.
Yeah, I mean that could not think of a more thing. Because like I said, whenever it all came out, I was like, wow, that is some odd timing. And then you see the hire, and it's like that makes sense. Yeah. The Bama video, I'm not gonna lie, I watched it multiple times, not because it was a great video, but because I laughed at it so hard when I watched it. I
Yeah,
was like, you might as well like put yourself this close to the camera, like not talking to the team, like you're talking solely into the camera. It's like, we beaten the best team in the country on the road. We done like buddy, you know the team is who you're talking to. You don't need to sell them on it. Uh,
yeah,
Nonetheless, though the last four in talking about them here, obviously Texas, North Carolina State, Miami, Ohio, and SMU. Now, from this, the only thing that really stuck out to me, I kind of expected Miami, Ohio to be in the last four in. I'm not gonna lie. It's not. I don't think they really should have. I thought they deserved an actual chance to get in, but I wasn't surprised. The only one that really surprised me was NC State because I kind of thought they had done enough to get like to the 10, maybe to the 9 line, but I hear people say it every single year, Austin, and I'm sure you can attest to it. You put yourself on the bubble, you have to live with the risk that could happen there.
yeah. I do completely agree with that. But I think we need a better definition for the bubble. Winning 30 games is
Yeah.
not on the bubble.
Yeah.
That's just being in the NCAA tournament. How many teams won 30 games this year? I bet it's not more than 10.
No,
I
definitely
feel
not.
like that's so I just, yeah, I don't understand. Look, I'm not saying give them a 1 seed. I'm not saying give them a top what 8 seed, but making this team play for a spot into this tournament is ridiculous. Um, and so now, like you said, they're on the bubble. They've got to come in. They've got to prove it. I think they're a capable team, though, and I think we're going to see a little bit of surprise and egg on the face of the committee here.
And I will say this, it's a team that played in a lot of close games this year, so they are comfortable late game situations. And I'll go ahead and say we've kind of hinted at, but I'll go ahead and say first four out. If I remember the order correctly, I believe they went Oklahoma, Auburn, San Diego State, and Indiana, which for Indiana, they just decide not to show up the final month of the season. That's on them. We already talked about Auburn. I thought maybe Oklahoma had done enough to maybe sneak in there as one of the last ones, but obviously uh, like I said, you when you put yourself on the bubble, you got to deal with whatever the consequences are. But enough talk about the bubble, Austin. Let's talk about this first four, and then let's get into these brackets. So the first four matchups, we'll get the 16 seed showdowns underway. A very familiar 16 seed in this first one, UMBC versus Howard here. Obviously, we all loved the Retrievers the last time they were a 16 seed NCAA tournament. Howard's been a consistent program though the last couple of years. So fun little matchup here. Who do you got for this one in the first four?
Man, this is going to be an awesome mashup and an awesome clash. But Howard, with that continued success and consistency, I like the Bison to get back into the NCAA tournament and take down UMBC. Close game, but I like Howard in this one.
Solely for the potential of, the upset happening again, I have to go with UMBC. But Howard has been a great story that they've become kind of a consistent program at the mid majors. Like we almost expect them every single year to get here. The other one is another one that I wish was matched up with a certain team from the ACC as a one seed, but we didn't get that, unfortunately. Other 16 seed matchup, Prairie View, the 8 seed from the SWAC tournament. Ladies and gentlemen, I say it every single year. The SWAC tournament never disappoints. But Prairie View taking on Lehigh in this first four matchup. Um, as I do every single year, y'all hear me say I root for Prairie View. I root for whoever wins the SWAC because it's usually a team that's not very good. So I'll root for them, but I think Lehigh is going to end of the day is going to win the game. What about you?
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm Lehigh in this one. Prairie View would be fun to see really get in and really try to do something, but I'm going to go with Lehigh. I think they've got the upset potential, and I think they've got the skill to make something happen here in March.
Okay, all right. Well, enough talk about the bubble in the first four matchups. Let's get into this full length bracket here, Austin, and let's start with the number one overall seed in the East region. And this is a season, whenever we talk about these one seeds, three of these four were just dominant all season long. I think we can all test that. The number one seed, the Duke Blue Devils, 30 plus wins. The Bouger twins going out. They have a lot of other great players as well. But the question, though, some injuries for Duke, injuries in the front court, injuries at the point guard position could lead to trouble. And you look at the rest of this region, it's a historic coaching region when you take a look at just some of the teams in this: Ohio State, St. John's, Kansas, Michigan State, UCLA, UConn, Louisville, and then some dark horse teams that we mentioned. Northern Iowa's in this, South Florida, UCF. This is a tough region. What was your first thoughts when you saw this one for Duke?
Man, I was like, talk about a tough draw. Like you said, this is going to be a kind of a grinded out region. It always feels like the number one overall seed, you kind of expect to have the easier uh, region. But like you said, you list off a team like having to go against UConn, who's been, won two of the last three national
Mm-hmm.
championships. You look at a team like Michigan State and Tom Izzo and what they've done. Even South Florida was an exciting ball team this year. Kansas has the potential number one overall pick on their roster. St. John's been a fun team over the last 2 years. So yeah, I think this is going to be kind of a grinded out region. And for the number one overall seed, you're almost looking at the committee and saying, "Hey man, what's this about?" I was expecting, something a little bit easier. But they're certainly a capable squad. To me, I'll come out and say this is the number one seed I feel the safest about in March. I think if there's any one seed that's going to make a super deep run, it's going to be Duke. They have the talent, they have the potential. But that tough region almost kind of comes in and nudges that out for me where it's like, yeah, I think they're the best, probably number one seed on paper, obviously number one overall seed. I think they have the talent to make a deep run, but then you have to combat that with kind of their region and say, well, because of their region, do we think they're going to make a deep run? Who they're going to have to play to get to the Final Four and to get to the national championship? So I'm excited to see the way this one turns out because this seems like it's going to be the big gauntlet where somebody can maybe pull off some surprises.
Absolutely. And something I didn't mention, you brought up and pointed at it, talking about some of these teams. The freshman class this year, Austin, we really haven't talked because we really haven't done NBA episodes or talking about what the future could be there. This freshman class in college basketball this year might have just been the greatest of all time. I'm not saying it is, but I think it's got to be up there. I mean, I could list the names, but I mean, we'd be here for another hour if I listed the names. But this is truly one of the best freshman classes I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah, I'm completely with you. I think this has been an awesome year, for freshmen, just for basketball in general. And it's been fun to watch the way a lot of these guys play. And you've got a lot of teams thinking about what they're going to do here upcoming this summer in the draft as they start to look. And I think you even end up with a 9 or a 10 in this draft, and you might feel okay about the guy you're going to
Yeah.
end up taking home.
I mean, I feel pretty confident. I will be very there. I really think the lottery could just be all freshmen from this year. The lottery could
Yeah.
just be freshmen from this year. But enough talk about Austin. I talked about the teams in the East region for and the path for Duke. It's an intriguing one, but go ahead and give us your first round here in the East.
So starting it off, number one versus number 16, Duke versus Siena. I like Siena, love the mascot, Saint Bernard.
Hmm.
But unfortunately, I've got the Duke Blue Devils moving on here. Then to clash between the Buckeyes and the Horned Frogs. I think the Buckeyes have been good this year, but I like the Horned Frogs to take this matchup. They've had some pretty gutsy wins in the Big 12 that I think can make them a little bit of a sneaky team coming into this tournament. And in a tough region, I think they could make some noise. St. John's versus Northern Iowa, a great season for Northern Iowa, but I'm going to go with Rick Pitino and St. John's. Maybe still riding a little bit of that high from last year where I picked the Red Storm to take it all the way. But I like St. John's and I like the program Patino's put together. He's a guy you can trust in March. Similarly with Bill Self in Kansas, young, talented squad. Darren Peterson, if he plays in March, is going to be phenomenal. But yeah, I like Kansas against CBU here. Uh, my first big shocker of the tournament, though, Louisville versus South Florida. I like the Bulls to take this matchup. For me, Louisville's been a good team, but I feel like they have the potential to kind of slip up. They haven't been as good. They haven't played to their full potential, I don't think. And with USF riding high, riding hot, I think they could take advantage of that opportunity and take down the Cardinals. So I've got the Bulls moving on. Then North Dakota State and Michigan State. I'm not sleeping on Tom Izzo in March. I like North Dakota State. I think if this was another 3 seed, maybe I'd think about what North Dakota State could do. But I just like Michigan State a little bit too much. Uh, so I'm going with Izzo and the Spartans. And then at number 7 versus 10, UCLA versus UCF. I'm going UCLA. Exciting season for UCF, but I just don't see him taking down the Bruins. And then number 2 versus number 15, UConn. Furman. I really like the Paladins, but playing against UConn, playing against Dan Hurley, I just think it's going to be so hard to take this team down. They're primed for a deep run in March. That's just what the Huskies are made to do. And so I'm going to take the Huskies to get the win here. But I love another Furman upset. Sam Darnold, if you know, you know.
Yes, you do. If you know, you know. So for mine, Duke and Siena, shout out Gary McNamara for Siena, what he did there first year. Former Syracuse guard, and that Syracuse head coaching job is open. Just pointing that out there. I think that'd be an obvious win to get everyone on board. Ohio State, TCU, close for me, but whenever it's close between these teams, I kind of look at guard play, and I got to go with the Ohio State all-time leading scorer, Bruce Thornton, going for the Ohio State Buckeyes. I think they at least do enough. But to me, regardless of who it is, I think it's going to be a tough matchup for Duke in round two because obviously, Caleb Foster, and even they have some pieces down low missing against a tough TCU team. But nonetheless, St. John's, Northern Iowa, my next one. So this one was literally the hardest pick for me because literally coming into the tournament, I'm like, St. John's is a very underrated team this year after everyone fell in love last year. It just doesn't feel like too much this year. And I came into it saying, man, I love Northern Iowa. They could be my Cinderella to make a Sweet 16 run. And then I saw the matchup they got, and I was like, well, gosh dang, it just ruined my fun. Why don't you bracket people? Two extraordinary defenses. First to 50 wins this game, but I'm going to trust in Rick Pitino to get out of the first round at least. I'll tell you that. I just don't see him losing a round when I'll pick St. John's. Similar to Kansas and Cal Baptist. Cal Baptist, if you watched that WAC championship game, number one, you were up at 1 a.m. Props to you. Number two, it was one of the more heartbreaking losses to a conference championship with Utah Valley missing a dunk in the final 2 seconds to lose. Absolutely heartbreaking there. But I think Kansas, with Darren Peterson and all the guys they have, I think there's enough talent here that gets them to the second round. I mean, just pure and simple. I think they can will their way to the next round. As much as it pains me to root for that pinhead on South Florida, I'm 100% with you. I think South Florida is going to beat Louisville in this one. Look, the main thing for me is mainly with Louisville. Michael Brown is incredible. Incredible guard, incredible scorer for them. They don't have much besides him, and he has been injured as of late. And not only that, South Florida has the bigs that I think can match up and make it tough down low and go with the great shooting South Florida has. Yeah, give me the Bulls. Make some magic happen here. And Michigan State, North Dakota State, it's Tom Izzo in March. Just going to move them along. Just pure and simple. Tom Izzo in March, you don't doubt the pick. UCLA, UCF was kind of a tough one for me because I love Johnny Dawkins, what he's done there. And I love Mick Cronin's rants that he has had after every single game. Whether it's a win or a loss, you're going to get a full rant from him. I mean, it's
Yeah.
ridiculous. I'm going to go with UCLA because they're playing better as of late. Donovan Dent's been awesome. I loved him at New Mexico last year. They've really kind of gotten into a groove as of late. They started the year slow, but now they're playing a lot more guard heavy lineup of 5 out sets, and they're playing a lot better. So I think they'll do enough to get by UCF. And UConn and Furman, this is the 15. If I was going to pick a 15 to pull off an upset, it would be Furman. Shout out Bob Ritchie. Like you said, Sam Darnold, if you know, you know. But Dan Hurley, I think, is getting to the second round. I'm going to pick UConn in this one. So that's our first round here in the East region. Austin, who's heading to the Sweet 16?
Well, let's take a glance at it here. I just clicked on the Sweet 16 and not round of 32, so that put me behind a little bit. But we've got Duke TCU squaring off, and as much as I like TCU and like their momentum, I think Duke has enough to get the job done here in the second round, especially if they can get that win in the first round, get their feet under them, feel a little bit comfortable about the guys that are playing. I think they can take it to TCU. As much as I love St. John's this past year and even coming into this tournament, like you said, I think they're a little underrated now, but they don't have that same kind of hype that they did last year, being Patino's first year and how good they were. They're still good, but again, I like Kansas and Darren Peterson. I think Darren Peterson can really make some noise now that it's almost going to be like he's, again, forced to play in the tournament.
Right.
Wouldn't look great to NBA teams if he sat out their biggest games of the year. So I like Kansas and Darren Peterson over St. John's. And as much as I like South Florida and the momentum they're riding, like you said, Tom Izzo, March, it's almost a guarantee to book him down to the Sweet 16.
Yep.
Really might not even have to talk about these first round games from here on out when Tom Izzo's coaching them. Because these first 2 rounds, it feels like he's going to get to the Sweet 16.
Like,
then we
he's
have to
going to
start talking
find a way.
about
You may even look at it and say that's a mismatch. It's like, no, he's going to find a way.
Yeah, I agree. And then UCLA versus UConn. I like UConn moving on here. I hate having a 1, 2, 3, 4 type of Sweet 16, but with the way this region shakes out, I really think these top 4 seeds have kind of the path right now. And how tough it is, how grueling it is. 1, 2, 3, 4 might be the way this one goes.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. Based on what I have and based on what you have, I think I know where the number one commentator crew would be heading for the Sweet 16 if these matchups held up the way they would. And there's always that
Yeah.
one bracket that holds up with the top seeds. There's always that one. So Duke, Ohio State in mind, even though the guard play could be an issue, I think Duke will be too much down low. Cam Boozer, I think, will do enough to get to the Sweet 16. St. John's and Kansas. Um, I think Kansas, really good. Darren Peterson's been great, but I just have my worries about the inconsistency I've seen from Kansas this year. So honestly, with that, I'll hop on the bandwagon for St. John's. Give me Rick Pitino, head to the Sweet 16 to face Duke. South Florida, Michigan State. I couldn't agree anymore with what you said there for that matchup. So I'm just going to let you know it'll be Michigan State for me. UCLA, UConn. I thought about it. I'm not going to lie. I thought about it. End of the day, though, Dan Hurley, I think, would come and kill me if I didn't have him in the Sweet 16. So I'm going to pick UConn to get to the Sweet 16 here. So you have 1, 2, 3, and 4. I have 1, 2, 3, and 5. So we're not that separate between the two. Again, I really felt that from the time I did the start of my bracket. I felt pretty confident in my Sweet 16, just like you probably did. But Austin, finish out your East region. Who's heading to the Final Four?
All right, in Duke versus Kansas, I think this is where Duke's injury woes could start to hurt them. I think Darren Peterson's going to be a little bit too much. Give him a handful. I like Kansas moving on to the Elite Eight, and then UConn versus Michigan State. Dan Hurley's got a good team. He's got a good squad, and as good as Izzo is, I think UConn heads to the Elite Eight. Kansas versus UConn. Give me Bill Self. Give me the Jayhawks headed on to the Final Four out of this East region. I
Woo!
Look, I like Kansas. I like the way this team plays ball. I think at their best, they're one of the best teams in the country. I think they're going to come out and make some noise here in March. Again, Darren Peterson has no choice but to play in these games. He is being forced to play basketball, which is somehow something you have to do. He has to play these games, so he has no choice but to drop 40 in every single game and carry Kansas to the Final Four.
Yeah. I mean, I really could not agree more there. Nonetheless, I think it's a fair point. I mean, Darren Peterson, he's got to play, right? I mean, if he
He
doesn't
has
play,
to.
if he
He has
doesn't
to
play,
play.
then this is a whole nother point added to the story of whatever the heck this freshman year has been. I mean, it's
Yeah.
one of the most bizarre freshman seasons I've ever seen. Because I still remember the BYU game at home. I watched that. I said, that's the best player in college basketball this year. And they just doesn't play the
Yeah.
entire second half. And then the whole Houston thing where he randomly was ruled out an hour before the game with flu symptoms, even though it was nowhere on the injury report. It's like, what are we doing here? To finish off mine, I got Duke versus St. John's. And I think there's a lot of things that go for Duke in this matchup, especially I think guard won't be as bad, but the defense of St. John's, and I think Zuby Ejiofor can go down low and fight with Boozer enough on the block. St. John's can make it a scrappy game. So you know what? Give me St. John's. Pull off the upset here and take down Duke in the Sweet 16. And then Michigan State, UConn. I two great coaches, awesome coaching matchup here. End of the day, though, I'm going to lean with Tom Izzo and the Spartans in this one. I think the rebounding for them, I think even though they lost to UCLA, I think they're playing a lot better than UConn has been as of late. I'll pick Michigan State. So my Elite Eight matchup, Rick Pitino and St. John's versus Tom Izzo and Michigan State. I think that's a win for everybody if that's the coaching matchup we get in the Elite Eight. And you know what?
Yeah.
Last year was the first time since 2013 we did not have a team seeded 5 or higher make the Final Four. We start a new streak this year. Give me the St. John's Red Storm, the surprise run, the one where everyone picked them last year. They don't get it. This is the year where they're a bit of a sleeper. They get all the way to the Final Four. All right. All right. So,
I
so
love
far,
it.
we got the 4 seed for you and the 5 seed for me. All right. I like it. So, one region down. Let's go across now to the number 2 overall seed, which is the Arizona Wildcats. Speaking of consistent teams, I mean, they're such a tough team, Austin. Such a tough team in the paint. They have some decent guard scorers, a great coach in Tommy Lloyd. And I'm not going to lie, they got a pretty decent region for them. Talking about some of the teams in this Wisconsin, Arkansas, BYU with AJ DeMonson, maybe the number 1 pick, Gonzaga, Miami, Purdue coming off a great Big Ten tournament run. And then you got some of the sleeper teams. You look at them. High Point, a team that everyone's loved the last 2 years. Hawaii, super excited to have Hawaii back. Don't like who they're playing, though. That's just unfortunate. And then you got Missouri, who's playing in St. Louis. I don't know how a 10 seed gets to play in their home state. I mean, that kind of just
No kidding.
throws me for a loop there. But an intriguing region here for Arizona. What were your thoughts when you saw this one?
Yeah, I thought it was fun. Like you said, seeing teams like Long Island, High Point, Hawaii in this one is always going to be fun. Queens was another fun team to watch during the conference tournament. I think some of these smaller schools, Kennesaw State, these lower seeded schools here in this division are kind of going to be fun ones to watch because I think a lot of these schools kind of, not saying that I've picked all of them to make upsets, but I do think they have this upset potential. I like, we're going to start talking about in these other 3 regions. I like the 16 seeds in these other 3 regions and what they might be able to do against these 1 seeds. I'm not saying any of these 1 seeds are
Right.
jokes by any means or that they're going to get beat. But I like the way some of these teams are playing. Long Island has found its momentum at the right time. They've been fun to watch. I'm really excited to see what happens with this region, just because there are so many teams that I think could be like wild cards in this tournament.
I could not agree more, especially with a team that I'm hoping has a decent run, but we will go from there whenever we get the chance. All right, let's dive into the West region. Give me your first round here in the West.
All right, starting off with 1 versus 16, Arizona versus Long Island. Long Island will be a team to watch. I would not be surprised if this game gets close. But I think Arizona's got the skill. Look, they won the Big 12 with a good BYU, a good Kansas in their conference, and they still came out and they were the number one team in this conference. Uh, Made it all the way, made it to the championship in the conference tournament. So I like this team. I like Arizona. I think they've got the skill to pull it out. Then Villanova and Utah State. Kind of a swing back up here
Mhm.
for the Wildcats. You know, after Jay Wright retired, a little bit of a different team, but now back in the tournament at the number 8 seed here. But I like the Aggies in this one. They played really well this year. I like them with some upset potential, especially matched up with a team everybody likes in Villanova, kind of a recent blue blood in college basketball,
Yeah.
if you will. And I like them to come out and surprise everybody with a win. Then Wisconsin versus High Point. The last couple of years of Wisconsin basketball have been really fun to watch. I've liked the brand of basketball they've been playing. But with High Point, they've got something going on. Like you said, the last couple of years, more and more people starting to tune in. And this is a team that I don't think is going to be a shocker that I've got winning in this game. I think a lot of people, this is like the easy kind of upset to pick. Wisconsin's been good, but I like High Point. I like the way they play the ball. They shoot a lot of threes and they make a lot of threes.
Hmm.
And that's always something that's going to stress out these big, talented teams is when these smaller schools can play up tempo, they can shoot and they can make their shots. This always puts a hurting on these bigger teams. Look at Oakland versus Kentucky a few years ago with Jack Goolish. We've got another look right here with High Point. I like the way they shoot the ball. I think they're going to be a team that plays with tempo, shoots the ball, scores a lot. I think they can outpace Wisconsin to win this game. Then at the number 4 versus number 13, Arkansas versus Hawaii. I'll say it may sound a little biased because I live in the state of Arkansas. The Hogs got cheated on their seed. They're the
Oh
number
my
2
gosh.
team in
Yeah.
the SEC. They win the SEC championship. Florida doesn't even make the SEC championship. And I'm not saying Florida shouldn't be a 1 seed, but if they're going to stay 1 seed, not even making the SEC championship, and their last 2 games in the SEC championship being pretty bad compared to their standard this season, uh, Arkansas goes out there, looks really good, wins. The fact that they're not sitting at a 2 or a 3 seed, I really thought they should have gotten a 2 seed, in my personal opinion. For them to be sitting in a 4 seed, I think that's going to light a fire under Cal and the guys. I like Hawaii. I would have loved to see them go on a run, but I think the Hogs are going to take this game and move on to the next round. I think they're primed for a big run here in March. Uh, then we've got the 6 versus the 11. Texas and NC State both offer their fair share of chances. I personally think NC State's going to get the job done in that game. But either way, I think BYU will be too much for Texas and NC State. They're sitting at a 6 seed, which I know with the way their season kind of finished, they had their flashes and they have the big potential with this team. But I like them. I think they're another team that's seated a little bit low, or at least going to use that to kind of be that bulletin board material, like I just talked about the Razorbacks. I think it lights a fire under them, and these guys are going to come out and play well. I like BYU over Texas or NC State. Gonzaga versus Kennesaw State hasn't been quite the dominant Gonzaga team we've
Hmm.
seen over the last couple of years. Still a great season by any means, and still won their conference.
Hmm.
But they're sitting at a 3 seed. They're a good quality school. I think they could be in some trouble come March and come this tournament, but I think they'll be able to handle Kennesaw State in what they present. Then we've got Miami versus Missouri. That's 7 versus 10. And like you said, even though this game is being played in St. Louis, I like Miami. You know me, I like the way the Hurricanes play in March. So I like them taking it down over the Tigers. And then number 2 versus number 15, Queens versus Purdue. If I was going to take a 2 versus 15, this is one of the ones I was heavily considering because I like the squad that Queens has. But at the end of the day, Purdue has had its ups and had its shooting struggle, but Braden Smith, I think, is a guy you can rely on. I think he's going to have a big March, and so I like Purdue to take down Queens.
All right. All right. I like some of those picks. So my picks, Arizona versus Long Island. I will do this in honor of Long Island. Fins up. Got to get it in there for them.
I love it.
If I don't see that in One Shining Moment, I'm suing One Shining Moment. That has to be in there.
I agree.
It's got to be in
I
there.
agree.
That being said, I think Arizona will handle business against Long Island, but I'll be rooting for the Sharks. I'll be rooting for them. Villanova and Utah State. I'm with you. I feel like people have kind of not given the respect to Utah State. They've been a consistent program the last couple of years in the Mountain
Agree.
West, and they've just had some tough first round matchups where, some people maybe look at it and just go, they're from the Mountain West. Mountain West was a one bid league this year. I don't know. Gerard Calhoun, what he's done in 2 short years there, absolutely top notch. I'm going to give it to Utah State. High Point in Wisconsin. My fear entering the selection show, Austin, was that High Point would be playing Arkansas, and I would be absolutely
Yeah.
petrified of that matchup. Well, it got pretty close. It got about as close as you could without actually having to face them. But they could be facing them in round two because I got High Point beating Wisconsin just like you. The thing that helps it is High Point relies so much on a three. They're not a big paint team. Neither is Wisconsin. These are two teams that rely on shooting the basketball and making 3-point shots. So take the over in this game. We don't have any best bets for the NCAA tournament. I would recommend the over in this game. I think there's going to be a lot of points scored here. And I think High Point's just a better shooting team as a whole. I think they find a way. Plus, Wisconsin has had a lot of good highs this year. They beat Michigan, one of the best wins in the entire season. But they've had some pretty ugly losses to go with that, too. So, inconsistency, I'm going to lean with High Point to win. Arkansas and Hawaii. I'm going to go ahead and say I'm obviously going to have Arkansas advance because I'm completely biased. But my reasoning here for it is something I noticed, Austin. I found out Friday, Saturday night, somewhere in there. I found on Twitter the Hawaii defensive strategy is one of the strangest I have ever seen. Have you heard anything about this?
I have not.
So, so number one, it's usually straight up man to man, zero help defense from anybody. No help
Oh,
defense.
I have seen this actually. I
Yeah.
have seen this.
They basically make you try to play ISO ball against them to beat them. They're not going to come ready to help and give up the extra shot there. They're not going to do that. And against teams where it's a team effort to win, that I think works. But when you have the best guard in the country in Darius Acuff, who has done so much in isolation, I think it's a mismatch for Hawaii against them. That being said, Hawaii has some size, 7-footer. They have multiple 6'8" and 6'10" forwards. So if they can rebound the ball, that's Arkansas's weakness. But I think Arkansas advances. So BYU and NC versus the winner of Texas and NC State. I think I just now realized I don't think I had us pick those games in the first four. That's my bad there. But I'll go ahead and make my pick here. I like NC State to win that game in the first four. Will Wade has shown he can win in March Madness. I'm trusting him to get this one. Versus BYU, obviously AJ DeMonza. I called him jokingly AJ DeMonsta on another show I did. I thought that was a pretty funny title I had for him because when you watch him play,
Yeah.
sometimes he's a freaking monster on the court, if you know. And I want to say he's enough with the talent around him, but I'm telling you, the loss of Richie Saunders to this BYU team, his shooting ability, I think hurts them in this matchup. And it's AJ's great. He is awesome, well worthy of being the number one pick. But I have questions still around the guys around him. That's my only concern here. And so I'm going to actually lean with the better team. I'm going to pick NC State to upset BYU here. Again, if Saunders is healthy and they got more shooting from him to help and just better scoring beside AJ, then I could see BYU maybe being a dark horse team that could go all the way to the Final Four. But without him, I just don't see it. I'll pick NC State. Gonzaga and Kennesaw State. I'll be rooting for Kennesaw, but kind of similar to my talk with Tom Izzo, Mark Few, Gonzaga's been to 9 out of the last 10 Sweet 16s. He wins in March. I'm picking Gonzaga there. Miami and Missouri, solely because, it's not really, but I'm going to say it's solely because Missouri somehow got a home game in St. Louis. I'm picking Miami to win. They're such a balanced scoring team. They got multiple great scorers. Jay Lucas in his first year in Miami, what he's done is one of the best turnarounds of the season. I think they were 8-24 last year, and they're 24-7 this year. So it's a great turnaround. Really balanced scoring. I like them to win. Purdue and Queens is literally an insane matchup for offense. I said take the over in High Point, Wisconsin. I would bet double what I would for Wisconsin High Point for the over in Queens and Purdue. Zero defense is being played in this game. Queens, I looked it up, literally has a top 30 offense in the country. But out of 300 plus teams, they have the 325th worst ranked defense in the country. They don't play defense. And so, really, in this game, it comes down to which team do I think could actually get a stop in this game if needed. And I think that's Purdue. I think Purdue will get the win there and get to the second round. So, let's get you going to the Sweet 16, Austin. Who you got going to the Sweet 16 out of the West?
First, we've got clashes between Arizona and Arkansas. And again, I think the Hogs are primed for a big run. I think they're playing a lot better than a 4 seed. Arizona is good, but I like the star power. I like the skill players here at Arkansas. I like what they can do. Obviously, Darius Acuff's been sensational. I think he's going to continue to be sensational. I like the Hogs moving on. Oh, actually, I'm a round ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, you're good. No, you're good.
Completely
I
so
was going
just so you know, Arizona beats Utah State and Arkansas beats High Point. I'm looking at the wrong section. So that's my Sweet 16. Arkansas going to the Elite Eight, in case you're curious.
I love it.
And then BYU versus Gonzaga. I'm looking at the right round of the bracket this time. Uh, I like BYU. I like the momentum they're playing with. I like the team they're playing with. I know there are a lot of questions around AJ, but I just think AJ is going to have a crazy March. I think he's got a lot to prove. I think he wants to be that number one pick. I think he can elevate the Cougars to another level. And especially with the way Gonzaga's played this season, I think they're beatable. They're not the best team ever. They're not the best Gonzaga we've ever seen. And I think that BYU can take it to them. I like BYU going to the Sweet 16. And then Miami versus Purdue. I'd love for another deep Miami run, but I think Purdue is still the more skillful team that's going to be able to get into that Sweet 16. And then just to go ahead and tell you who's Arkansas is going to be facing the Elite Eight. I've got BYU, Purdue. Give me BYU to continue this run. They're a team that I'm just in love with right now. This is one of my big teams here in March. I like BYU to upset Purdue. I think this is where if it comes down to that matchup in guard play against Braden Smith against AJ, who do I trust more? Who's been more reliable this season? I trust AJ. I trust the Cougars to get the job done and move on to the Elite Eight to face the Razorbacks.
All right. All right. So I'll go ahead and get mine in Arizona, Utah State. I think Arizona will cruise in that one. Arkansas High Point is literally my nightmare because I love High Point. The good news for Arkansas is they're not a good rebounding team. So that should hopefully help for Brazil and them on the inside to at least get by there. NC State and Gonzaga in mine. I think Gonzaga does enough to be able to get by, to get to the Sweet 16. And then, you talked about Miami maybe not going on a deep run for you for the first time in what feels like forever. It feels like, every time Miami's in a tournament going on a deep run. I'll take a swing out on this time. I'm taking Miami to upset Purdue in the second round here. I like Miami again. I think such a balanced scoring team, so many different guys they can rely on late in the game. I think that balanced scoring, and again, Purdue really not the best defensive team. Miami, I think, is a little bit better defensively. I'll pick Miami to pull up the shocker there. And so I can get to the Elite Eight in mind. I'll go ahead and say I got Arizona versus Arkansas. Arkansas is a great team, great guard play. But if there's a weakness, they are just god awful in the paint. They are just terrible. And the best paint team in the entire country, not from the SEC, is Arizona. I hope Arkansas wins. But this feels a lot like my Arkansas UConn pick a few years ago, where I was completely right that UConn would kill them, and UConn proceeded to kill them. Then I have Gonzaga versus Miami. If it comes down to this matchup, I think Mark Few and them can at least get to the Elite Eight. So I have an Arizona-Gonzaga matchup in mind. But, Austin, you got Arkansas and BYU. Who's heading to the Final Four out of your West region?
Headed to the Final Four between Arkansas and BYU. I'm riding high on the Cougs. I'm riding high on the Mormons. Send them to the Final Four. Brigham Young University. Let's go, Cougs.
All right, BYU. Arizona and Gonzaga. I'm not going to lie. If this matchup happens, Arizona will win. I don't think it'll really be close. That's just my opinion. Graham Ike could be interesting on the low block against Arizona, maybe. But guard play, I think Jackie Bradley Jr. in them, I think will do enough to get to the Final Four. So you've got Kansas and BYU so far in years. I got St. John's, Arizona in mind. Let's move to the bottom right hand bracket in this region, the Midwest region, home to the Michigan Wolverines, a team that fell just short in the Big Ten championship, but a team that, like the other two, were clearing away one of the top three teams in the country, ran away with the Big Ten this year, and have an interesting path in front of them. We will see what they can do. But talking about this region, interesting pieces here. Let's talk about it. St. Louis, obviously one of the fun Cinderellas from the A10 that we think maybe could happen. Texas Tech is here, but no JT Toppin. Obviously, that's a discussion. Alabama was going to say maybe they could go on a run, and then obviously some news happened today. If you paid attention to the news, kind of worked out where, maybe that's kind of in question now. Tennessee, a team that really is better than their seed, but they just choked away some games. Miami, Ohio, we talked about already. Virginia, one of the best Virginia teams in recent memory, since 2019 probably. Kentucky, Iowa State, and a team that I think everyone is keeping an eye on. I'm just going to go ahead and say it is Santa Clara as one of my dark horses. But your thoughts here on this Midwest region?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. I like some of the names in this region. I think can make some big things happen and be kind of an exciting uh, little bit of a team here, or exciting matchups, I should say, where you've got some fun teams that maybe don't have the biggest expectations that can maybe make something happen. I like a lot of the names in here, a lot of the universities that are being represented here. I feel like maybe this is kind of the fun region for me with some of the teams that are here, like you said, St. Louis, Miami of Ohio. If they were to win their first four game, they'd be here. Hofstra, Akron. I love Akron. The Zips is one of my favorite mascots in college sports. Tennessee State,
Yep.
notable alum Robert Covington.
Yep.
If you know, you know. But I like this region. I think it's, again, kind of my fun region for some of these schools that'll be represented here.
I couldn't agree more. Well, it's your fun region. Take us through the first round of your fun region. Let's see what you got here for the Midwest.
In my fun region, let's have some fun. Look, circle this Michigan versus 16 seed. I think it's going to be Howard. Um, I'll say it. I don't have them winning. I don't have it picked. I'm not brave enough in my main bracket to have it picked. Um, but I think Howard can win this game. Michigan, like you said, dominant, ran away with the Big Ten. Why, oh, why, oh, why are you picking this? This is how it happens.
Yep.
Virginia, Purdue, this is how it happens. This is the recipe for the 16 seed upset. And if it were to be UMBC again, it could get even
Yeah.
crazier.
Yeah.
But they come in with all this momentum and this potential. Virginia looked like one of the best teams we'd ever seen in college basketball. Purdue had Zach Edey. They had all these expectations, and they come in the first round and they just get out game planned by a team that's just better. And if Howard comes into this game, Howard could really use their game plan, their consistency. It's not their first time. They're not new to this, and they could come out and really make something happen. If it's UMBC, again, another university not shying away from it, we've done this before. I think that something could happen here in this first game. I think this will be a close game, but I'm going to take Michigan. They are a talented team. They've seen the heartbreak. They've dominated the Big Ten. They look like one of the best teams. At their best, they could make a national championship run. But I think this would be close. I think Howard could give them a real fight.
All right.
Then 8 versus 9, Georgia versus St. Louis. I'm riding with St. Louis in this game. They're a fun, exciting team to watch. I'm not super duper sold on the Georgia Bulldogs when it comes into March here. See how they do. But I like St. Louis in this game. Texas Tech, like you said, no JT Toppin, could open the door for some crazy things to happen here in March. But I still like how well coached and talented this team is. I think this team isn't just JT Toppin, and I think they can make some stuff happen. I like them against Akron. Alabama versus Hofstra was one I was kind of back and forth on. Like you said, with the news coming out today, maybe Hofstra kind of nudges a little bit closer. My big gripe with Alabama is I think they should have had to vacate all the wins
Right.
that they played any legal player in this season,
Yeah.
and they shouldn't be in March at all. I think they should face a punishment for that. I know at the time he was a legal player, but then it gets overturned to being a legal player. I think, hey, we make it a pretty big offense and a pretty big slap on the wrist so this doesn't happen again. You vacate all these games. And now teams think second chance or a second time before they just pull an NBA player out of the G League and put him back on their roster. But I think Alabama's talented enough to win this game, my grudge aside, um, and move on to the round of 32. Then we've got Tennessee versus the winner of Miami of Ohio, SMU. I think SMU's a talented squad, but I like Miami of Ohio. I think they're a talented squad. I think they're getting slept on, and now I think they're getting extra crap because they lost in the MAC tournament. Um, I like them winning against SMU. I like them winning against Tennessee. They played in close games. They played in tough games. They know how to get the job done. I like Miami of Ohio moving on to the round 32, making Tennessee uncomfortable, moving on. Which, if you've been watching for a few years, is maybe a little bit of a surprise because Miami's another one of those, or Tennessee's another one of those teams I like to cheer for come tournament time. But I like Miami of Ohio in that matchup. Then Virginia, kind of a return to form for this program after the last couple of years, getting back up there in the ACC, back up there as a 3 seed. Really exciting for them. I like Virginia to kind of ride that momentum and move on. We've got Kentucky. Not the best year for Kentucky, but not the worst year, facing off against Santa Clara. I think the Broncos could make an upset here. I like Santa Clara moving on to the next round, making something happen, shocking everybody, winning against Mark Pope in Kentucky. And then Iowa State versus Tennessee State. I like Iowa State in the program they built. They're consistent. They're a good quality team. I like them moving on against Tennessee State into that round of 32.
All right, all right. So for mine, I'm with you. I think out of all the 116 matchups, whoever it is, UMBC or Howard, whoever it is, I think can give Michigan a bit of a scare. I truly think that can be the matchup. And as someone who, I mean, who's someone who truly thinks, like you said, someone who thinks Michigan can win the whole thing. Michigan's very capable. They have a lot. They're really balanced. They have the height. They have the shooting. They have the great guards, great forward play. But I'm telling you, like you said, this matchup between 1 and 16, I would keep my eye on, regardless of who it is for this one. But I think Michigan does do enough to get by them. A little bit of a late run to kind of seal the deal. St. Louis and Georgia. Um, you mean to tell me I get the chance to root for Robbie Avila in the NCAA tournament after I was
Yep.
robbed to him at Indiana State? You think I'm not picking him? Yeah, no chance. I'm picking St. Louis to go the second round. Texas Tech, Akron. Fun matchup here. This is where I have the Akron Zips pulling off the upset. I think the big thing that helps them, number one, like I said, no JT Toppin. Akron's a small team. They're not the biggest team in the world when it comes to average height in the team. So you take JT Toppin out of the equation, I think that hurts them. But also, Christian Anderson for Texas Tech, great scorer. Got injured in the Big 12 tournament. He's not 100% entering this one. So why not? Let's get the Zips. They've been one of the more dominant teams in the country the last 4 years. Just recently three-peated as MAC tournament champs. So they know they're building a solid program there. And their style of play is so fun and up-tempoed. I like them to pull off the upset there. Alabama and Hofstra. Before the events of today, and with Aiden Holloway for Alabama getting arrested for having a thing that he should not have had on him. Um, prior to that, I felt like this was a pretty comfortable win for Bama against Hofstra. Without him, as they said, most likely he's not playing. I think it could be closer, but it's hard to out Bama, and that's what Hofstra does. They want it to be high tempo, high scoring. I think Bama does enough to get to the second round. Tennessee versus either Miami, Ohio, or SMU. I think SMU is a bad matchup for Miami, Ohio, and that's just and I hate doing this because I love Miami, Ohio. I hope they prove me wrong, and I hope they go on a run that shows the country everything that they can be and show why they deserve a better seed. I think SMU is a bad matchup for them, so I'd lean SMU in that game. But whoever it is, in my opinion, whoever I pick there, I still think Tennessee, end of the day, will be him. Tennessee's the number one team in the country in offensive rebounding. Neither of those teams are truly the best in their front court. I think Tennessee can manhandle whoever it is there. Virginia and Wright State. This is the 3-14 matchup that I see potential upset happening here. I think Virginia wins, but I think Wright State, it wouldn't shock me if Wright State's the one to pull off the upset against them. They match up really well guard wise against Virginia. Again, I'm going to pick Virginia in the game, but I will not be shocked if we're talking here a few weeks from now talking about, man, what an upset that was for Wright State against Virginia. Santa Clara versus Kentucky. Easiest pick for me of the entire NCAA tournament, even more than the Arkansas Hawaii pick. And that's Santa Clara beating Kentucky in this one. They have the height, they have the great shooting. Plus, I just hate Kentucky. So that also makes the pick a lot easier. And then Iowa State and Tennessee State. If you watch Tennessee State in the Ohio Valley Conference Championship, they shot lights out from the field. They made like 18 threes in that game. So if that team shows up, they can give Iowa State a run for their money. I don't think they're going to do that against the Iowa State defense. I'll pick Iowa State to win this game. But Austin, we got them set to the round of 32. Who do you got going to the Sweet 16 in this Midwest region?
I'll read the right matchups this time. I've got Michigan and St. Louis clashing. And as fun as it would be to see St. Louis continue on a March Madness run, I'm going to give it to Michigan here to move on to the Sweet 16. And then Texas Tech, Bama. Again, you look at the way Bama plays, you look at how good they are. But I think Texas Tech's the kind of team that can get them out of rhythm, get them uncomfortable, and make things happen. I like the Red Raiders to head to the Sweet 16. Then Miami of Ohio versus Virginia. I like the Red Hawks here. They keep it going. They ride the momentum. I think they take it to the Virginia Cavaliers and move on to that Sweet 16. And then Santa Clara versus Iowa State. As much as I like Santa Clara and what they're doing this season, Iowa State's, they've got that recipe for success. And so I like them to get the job done here with their skill set and move on to that Sweet 16 and make a nice deep run for this program.
All right. So for my Michigan and St. Louis, I'll be honest with you. I think Michigan, if this matchup were to happen, I think Michigan would destroy St. Louis. It's no disrespect to St. Louis. I really think I would probably bet Michigan to cover the spread, whatever it is that they faced off. Just bad matchups all around for St. Louis against that Michigan team. Akron versus Alabama. I had this pick prior to the stuff today about Aiden Holloway, their number 2 scorer. But now I feel even more confident they don't have him. Give me Akron to upset Alabama. They run up tempo with each other. This is my Cinderella team. My only double-digit seed in the Sweet 16. The Akron Zips are going to the Sweet 16. I think their style of play matches up well with either Texas Tech or Bama if they were to face both of them. And again, such a talented team. I think they're due for a run here in March Madness. Tennessee versus Virginia. Again, I think this is where Tennessee's ability to rebound, and I think Virginia struggles with guard play, defending great guards. Jacoby Gillespie's pretty good for Tennessee. I like 6 seed Tennessee to pull off the upset here against Virginia, get to that Sweet 16. And Santa Clara, Iowa State, I really wanted to do it. But I already picked 1-2 seed to go down the round of 32. I don't know if I can do another one. I'm going to go with Iowa State to get to the Sweet 16. So, Austin, who is going to be your third team heading to the Final Four? Finish out your Midwest region.
So then I've got a clash between Michigan and Texas Tech. This is where I think missing those pieces and not being at 100% can really start to affect Texas Tech. I've got the Wolverines moving on to the Elite Eight. And then Miami of Ohio, I think this is where the run ends. I think Iowa State's the team that makes you uncomfortable, the team that gets you out of your shell, and they're able to control it and move on to that Elite Eight. And then Michigan versus Iowa State, a 1 versus 2, even with all the chaos that's happened in this region for me. I like Iowa State to take it to Michigan and kind of shock them and head to that Final Four. Be a huge moment for this Iowa State program that's had so much success to be able to pay that off with a Final Four visit. I think that's what is on the agenda for the Cyclones.
Hey, TJ Alselberger, I root for him every chance I can. Great coach at Iowa State and what he's done there. So my matchup, Michigan versus Akron. What a matchup this is. I'm not going to lie. any of the four teams from that little sub-regional of Texas Tech, Akron, Alabama, Hofstra, whoever came out of there, I had Michigan beating. So I have Michigan beating Akron in that one. I have Tennessee versus Iowa State. This was a tricky one. This is one I kind of went back and forth on again because I think the rebounding ability of Tennessee is so potent, especially in the NCAA tournament with a lot of missed shots. They can crash the boards. And I think that also could be the thing against this Iowa State team. They may force the bad shots, but I trust in Tennessee's offensive rebounding ability to take over. I like Tennessee to upset Iowa State, giving me an Elite Eight of Michigan versus Tennessee. And again, I think this is, though, the point where Michigan matches well against that front court of Tennessee and some of those other forwards. I like Michigan to beat Tennessee, and I think the Wolverines head to the Final Four. All right, Austin. We got 3 of 4 done. We've got one more bracket to go. The South region here, where the number one overall seed is a team we kind of talked about in Florida, who prior to the SEC tournament looked like one of the best teams in the country. They were rolling in the SEC, had the biggest backcourt in the or biggest front court in the country. But now there's some questions that kind of brought back up from non-conference play. Can their guard play be the thing that carries? Can that help them get to the national championship and repeat? And they better look out. They got some tough teams in their region. Vandy, a team that just beat them in the SEC semifinals. Nebraska, Illinois, obviously you know them pretty well. St. Mary's, the Gales, who doesn't love the Gales? Houston, obviously the team Florida met in the national championship last year. And I'll go ahead and say it. I think the winner of Clemson and Iowa, whoever that is in round one in that one, can give Florida quite a scare in round two. But your thoughts on this South region?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think the thing I like about it is with the way these teams are kind of playing, this is another one where I feel like it's anybody's ball game, just because it's a lot of different styles, a lot of different clashes. And like you said, you look at a team like Vandy, and maybe you think, oh, it's Vandy, and some of the teams they might match up against could hold them down. But if they do make a run out to the Sweet 16 and meet Florida again, they kind of have that leg up on Florida already, implement a similar game plan. They've shown they can do it once. And so that kind of creates these opportunities. And you look at the team like North Carolina, who has had its ups and downs this year. It's had wins over Duke, the number one overall seed. But not everything's been perfect about this team this year. And so they could have their moments where they could really be big. Same with Nebraska. So I think it's a lot of teams that kind of, maybe you look at this bracket on paper and it kind of looks like maybe the weakest bracket of all the regions here. But a lot of these teams have big potential with some of their moments that they've had this season where they can make something really big happen in this NCAA tournament.
I cannot agree more. There's a lot of matchups that I really, really like in this region. But Austin, let's finish out the final first round of our brackets here. Give us your first round in this South region.
Florida versus either Prairie View or Lehigh. Personally, I've got Lehigh winning this game. But in this clash, Florida was going to be the team that I was like, circle this one. This is, if there's a 16 seed matchup to pick, it would be this one. But I think they kind of got the best shake of all the 16 seeds available. I think Lehigh could give them a fight, but not the same kind of fight that I think some of these other teams could have really put up against Florida. I think they should thank the committee, and maybe that's winning last year's national championship where they're getting a little bit of this help. But they could have been in a tough spot with the way they're playing. Somebody coming in with momentum like a Howard and really been in a tough spot. But now, because they're playing a Lehigh or a Prairie View, I think they'll be able to get through this game and get on to the next round. Clemson versus Iowa. I love Iowa basketball. I love watching the way this team plays. I've got Iowa over Clemson, even though I think Clemson's had a pretty decent year this season. Vanderbilt coming into this, maybe before the SEC tournament, McNeese State would have been a team I would have said, hey, they've got some upset potential. And I think they absolutely still do. But now Vanderbilt kind of riding that high. I know you came up short in the SEC championship. That's a bummer. But you beat Florida. You know what's ahead. You know, hey, if we clash with number one, we've got the leg up on them after that SEC championship. Last time we played, we won. I think that that's something to be a confidence booster. I like Vandy in this game. Troy, another fun team we get to see clashing in the NCAA tournament. Unfortunately, they meet a team that I really, really like in this tournament, in the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Yeah, they didn't have the some of the big flashy moments, but a number 4 seed for Nebraska is incredible. The job Fred Hoiberg's done there since
My
his
goodness.
less than gracious exit from the Chicago Bulls organization. He's really turned around his alma mater and now got them as a contender in a very talented Big Ten. I like Nebraska moving on here. Then we've got North Carolina, VCU, and as good as VCU is, they're always a team I look at in March as somebody that can make something happen. But I like North Carolina with their talent to still get the job done here in the first round and move on to the round of 32. Then we start to really open up the questions about what this North Carolina team can really do down the road. St. Mary's versus Texas A&M. This is the easiest pick of the whole bracket of the whole first round for me. I like the Gales. I like the style of basketball they play. I think they always somehow, even now, continue to surprise people. They are a great defensive team.
Mhm.
They will bend you to play however they want you to play. And that's what they're going to do here against Texas A&M. They're going to control the game, control the tempo, and move on to that round of 32. And then Houston versus Idaho. I like Houston. I like Kelvin Sampson. I think he's got a bad taste in his mouth the way last season ended. I like Houston and Idaho. I like Houston over Idaho to move on to that round 32.
All right, all right. Yeah, I'm with you on Florida in that top part. I think Florida easily got the best 16 seed to, or the easiest 16 seed to play whoever it is there. Um, I'll tell you that I got Florida pretty comfortable there. Iowa and Clemson, tough one for me. But again, I love Bennett Sturts and what they've been able to do in year one there in Iowa. I like Iowa to beat Clemson. Just Clemson too up and down in what was kind of a ACC this year, which totally random. You talked about pace with St. Mary's and how they make you play slow down. It won't happen, but it realistically could happen. Imagine an Elite Eight of Iowa and St. Mary's. That would be the slowest played Elite Eight game maybe in the history of the tournament. I mean, I feel like first
First,
to 30 is
first
going
to
to win that
20.
game. I could see it. I could see it
Yeah.
being first to 20. It'd be a 15 to 18 game at halftime, something like that. I mean, it would be horrendous, but I would look at it and go, this is absolutely beautiful. I love it here. So I got Iowa beating Clemson. Vanderbilt McNeese, I'm with you on it. I think Vandy's riding high off that SEC tournament. Remember, the reason they struggled at points in SEC play, Duke Miles, their great guard, was out with injury. He's 100% back now. They're a smaller team, but they're a scrappy team. I think they find a way and get past McNeese. Nebraska and Troy, there's not many times I'm just actively rooting for a team just to win their first round game, but Nebraska has never won an NCAA tournament game, and I really want them to get on the board this year.
Wow.
They never won a single NCAA tournament game, so I'm rooting for Nebraska. Just get one on the board, please, and beat Troy. Get one on the board. I'll pick Nebraska to win. North Carolina and VCU. This is a tricky one. No Caleb Wilson, obviously, from North Carolina. I think with the shooting VCU has and a physicality that can match up North Carolina well, I like VCU to pull off the upset here. I don't think I'll have them going as far as you. I think you had them going to the Elite Eight last year, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I loved their size last year, and unfortunately, it just didn't quite deliver the
Right.
way I wanted. But they were a great post defense and rebounding team. They were phenomenal last year. I loved their size, so I'm rooting for the Rams always.
Of course. And then Illinois and Penn. Actually, now I think about I didn't hear you say yours, but you didn't even need to say yours.
I
I knew what you
yeah,
were
I
picking there.
I was gonna say I think I skipped over this one. This was actually tough for me, if you'll believe that. I love
That's fair.
Illinois, and I think they're such a talented squad this year. But watching the way Penn played in the Ivy League tournament, which
Yep.
if you didn't watch, I feel sorry for you because the
Yeah.
Ivy League tournament was awesome. But Penn really kind of shocked Harvard and Yale, the 1 and 2 seed. They beat them in back-to-back nights to win the Ivy League conference. I liked the pace that they played with, but yeah, I picked Illinois at the end of the day. Brad Underwood's got a great squad, and I think Penn's really going to give them a fight. But Illinois is going to get the job done in this one.
Yeah, I was really stunned watching the end of that game. I got to watch that Ivy League championship, especially not as much so. That championship game was awesome between those two teams.
Yeah,
Really stunned me that Penn did it. And of course, Penn led by former Iowa coach Fran McCaffrey. We know who could forget his iconic stare down with the official when they were playing Michigan State. I mean, he
Yeah.
is a character among college basketball. So him versus Brad Underwood, must see coaching matchup round one. I do think Illinois takes care of business and wins. St. Mary's A&M. I was with you. This was an easy pick. I love rooting for the Gales every single year in March. They've become such a consistently dominant team in that West Coast Conference. They've gotten better and better each year, and it keeps on feeling like Austin. Every single year feels like the difference between them and Gonzaga, it just inches a little closer every single year. So I like St.
That's
Mary's to
why
win
Gonzaga
this.
had to get out.
Uh-huh. That's why they're heading to the Big 12. They're like, St. Mary's is getting too good. We've got to get out of
Yeah.
here. Which is a
Yeah, that's
shame.
exactly what I
It's a shame that we
agree.
don't get that as a two times a year as a conference. Hopefully they make it a non-conference rivalry. I would really love if they could do something like that together there.
I would
Um,
agree.
Houston, Idaho. Idaho's scrappy. They went on a great run, but I think Houston will handle business. Like I said, Kelvin Sampson, bad taste in his mouth, wanting to get back to that natty. But Austin, who do you have advancing on to the Sweet 16 in this South region?
First off, we got that one seed Florida versus Iowa squaring off, and I like the Gators to move on. I think Iowa can give them a tough game, but I still think they've got the talent to get the job done and move on to the next round. Vandy, Nebraska, kind of almost feels like Vandy's the better team coming into this game, but I like Nebraska. I think if they can get that first one out of the way, they can really start to put some momentum together and make something happen here in March. I like Nebraska over the Commodores here. North Carolina versus Illinois. This is where I think you start to have those questions without Caleb Wilson.
Mm,
What do the Tar Heels do? I think Illinois is just too good of a team all around. And with North Carolina missing their star player, I think Illinois moves on to that Sweet 16. And then Houston versus St. Mary's. This is that team that I fall in love with here. I've got the Gales winning this game. Again,
hey,
I just love their defense. I love their talent. I love their skill. I love to root for Kelvin Sampson and Houston, but in this one, I think they met their match against the St. Mary's squad that looked really good this year. So that's who I've got going to the Sweet 16.
I love it. I love it. So I have Florida versus Iowa here. The style of play Iowa has, they can beat Florida. It would not shock me at all if Iowa beat Florida in this one. I do think the Gators have enough in the paint, though. I think they get to the Sweet 16. Vandy, Nebraska, you said it for me. I think Vandy's just the better team in the matchup right now. And plus, I really want to see Florida and Vandy round three. So therefore, I'm going to pick Vandy to win this one, get to the Sweet 16. VCU versus Illinois for me. Whoever it is in that North Carolina VCU game, I think Illinois handles them with the way their offense has been this year. St. Mary's, Houston. When I tell you, Austin, I spent 30 minutes alone reflecting on this game and trying to decide who I have going to the Sweet 16. I love St. Mary's. I love Houston. This is going to be such a freaking scrappy game between these two teams. It will be awesome. But I tell you what, I just think there's something with Kelvin Sampson. I think, again, like you talked about, that national championship there, failing in the last seconds. He's got the chip on his shoulder to try to get back to that Final Four. I think they inch it out against the Gales. We'll go like 50-47, something like that. Not even 100 points scored in the matchup with the pace of play with them two. I got Houston in this one. But Austin, we're at the Sweet 16. Finish out your last region and who's going to be your last team heading to the Final Four in Indianapolis.
So in a clash between Florida and Nebraska, I think Nebraska can put up the Dukes and hang in there with Florida, but I think the Gators get the job done. I think the size still too much in that matchup. And then Illinois versus St. Mary's. I like the Illini to win this game. I think this is the best offense that St. Mary's is going to see all season long, and I think they'll be able to push past that very talented defensive unit in St. Mary's and still hang those offensive numbers that this team has put up all year long. And then in my Elite Eight, Florida versus Illinois, I think this is the first matchup Florida faces where the size differential is not as big. The front court dominance is not going to be quite as much in this game, and you're going to have to rely on that backcourt, rely on those perimeter players. And who do I think has a better perimeter between these two teams? It's Illinois. I think Illinois gets the job done and heads to the Final Four.
All right, all right. So for mine, I have Florida versus Vandy round three. And at this point of year in the NCAA tournament, I always look at it as first few rounds. I think it's all about front court depth. Truly, I think front court depth and being able to handle business on the rebounding, I think is the main factor in the early rounds. When you get to the Sweet 16 and beyond, I could see a lot more guard play being a factor in this one. And I just think Vandy's guard play is better than Florida. I think Vandy gets Florida again here. They move on to the Elite Eight. Illinois versus Houston. If this happens in the Sweet 16, besides Arkansas and Arizona, this would be the matchup I would look forward to the most in the Sweet 16 if these two were to face off. It's tough for me, but again, I keep on finding myself falling in love with Kelvin Sampson teams. I think Kingston Fleming, the true freshman guard, having him as a lot more versatile of a scorer, I think is a little bit of a difference here. Close game. I'm giving the edge to the Cougars. So I've got Vandy versus Houston in my Elite Eight. Talk about that for a fun Elite Eight. But ladies and gentlemen, if Houston makes the Elite Eight in the South Regional, where that Sweet 16 and Elite Eight games are in Houston, Texas, ain't no way Houston's losing at home. I got Houston beating Vandy, getting to the Final Four. They're my fourth Final Four team. So, to recap, Austin, let's hear what are your four Final Four teams?
Kansas, Illinois, BYU, Iowa State.
All right, three Big 12 teams in there. I like it. I like it.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate shakeout. It doesn't help that they're all like geographically
Right.
spaced out, so
Yeah.
it doesn't feel like they're in the same conference.
I know it. Well, freaking, that's how it feels in every conference nowadays. My Final Four: St. John's, Arizona, Michigan, and Houston. I like my Final Four. If I contemplated between St. John's and Michigan State, but in the day I'm just not going to doubt Rick Pitino. But Austin, have your Final Four here. Finish out your Final Four. Who's winning those semifinal matchups, and who will be crowned as your national champion?
In a matchup between Kansas and Illinois, this is where I think that having that superstar, having that face can really shine. I like Darren Peterson and the Kansas Jayhawks to push past the Fighting Illini, make it to the national championship game. And then on the other side, Iowa State and BYU. I think with the engine going, everything on the line, BYU finds a way to edge out Iowa State and put themselves in the national championship game where we've got a Kansas BYU clash battle of two top teams in the Big 12, but even more importantly, battle between the two top prospects in this year's draft class. Not just the number one pick on the line, but the national championship on the line, and a battle to prove who's the top dog. I like BYU, the Cougars, to get the job done and win the national championship in Indianapolis to be crowned the 2026 college basketball champs.
Okay, all right. Yeah, man, the storylines write themselves if those two match up in the national championship. The storylines write themselves there. I mean, come on. So for my first one, I have St. John's facing Houston. Fun matchup there. Two scrappy teams. I mean, no one's getting out of this without a couple of scars in this matchup. End of the day, though, I'm going to lean on the guard play of Houston and Kingston Fleming to get back to that national championship game. And then in my matchup in my other one, Arizona versus Michigan. This would be an awesome matchup if these two face off. The difference to me, though, Arizona, not a great shooting team. Michigan can match down low with them, much better shooting team. And I think if Arizona's forced to shoot the jumpers a lot more, that can be the difference. I like Michigan to beat Arizona. And my national championship is Houston versus Michigan. And in this one, I think the post play of some of the guys from Michigan and the forward position with Axel Lindenborg, I think is the difference in this one. And I like the Michigan Wolverines to cut down the nets and win the national championship in this one. But there you go, ladies and gentlemen. There's our brackets. Our brackets are say you got Kansas Jayhawks in one, Michigan Wolverines in the other. And Austin, our brackets are complete. We've talked through all the matchups, our potential upsets. There's only one thing to do now, Austin. That's to sit back and watch the games and watch the madness unfold. But
yeah, I mean, yeah. I'm excited. I'm ready to watch these games and these clashes. I'm so ready for March Madness. It feels like we're in for a treat this coming next couple weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's going to do it for this episode. We will try to get back to regular schedule soon. I am going on vacation after the first round of the NCAA tournament and stuff. We're going to Florida for a week. So we probably won't have an episode out until we'll probably have to another week off, and then we'll go again. We'll talk all about this, and we'll talk about NFL free agency and the NFL offseason. Been an intriguing one so far. A lot of big moves, some quarterback changes. I mean, shoot, we're still having trades today involving quarterbacks. So, I mean, the
Yeah.
storylines are still there for all kinds of things. Bears are making moves. The Steelers are making moves too, which again, I'm still not used to the Steelers actually being aggressive in the offseason. That just never happens there. But we'll dive into those in our future episodes. But that'll do it for this episode. Enjoy the madness, everybody. That's Austin Hill. I'm Austin Waiter, and we want to thank you for watching.